and welcome to Telewizja Republika. In a stark reminder of the fragility of peace, the early hours of Thursday witnessed a massive missile onslaught on the Ukrainian capital Kyiv and its neighboring regions. Russian forces, in an escalation of the ongoing conflict, Russian attack against Ukraine, deployed an array of weaponry, including the feared hypersonic Kinjals launched from over a dozen strategic bombers. The air raid sirens, and now all too familiar prelude to destruction, wailed across Kyiv at 3:30 a.m., heralding the approach of doom. Residents, among them, as Kyiv Post mentions, stationed in various districts, were jolted awake by the menacing roar of explosions, grim harbinger of the daybreak. Julia Strack, one of the correspondents, recounted the terror of mistaking the initial blast for a nuclear attack, illustrating the profound fear that grips the heart of a city under siege. The assault shattered more than a certainty of the early morning. It inflicted wounds, both physical and psychological, as we know it, on the beleaguered populace. Kyiv's emergency services, emblematic of the resilience that has come to define Ukraine, sprang into action, administering aid amidst chaos. The district of Shevchenko and Sviatoshinsky bore the brand of the casualties, a testament to the indiscriminate nature of modern warfare. Amidst this turmoil, a beacon of hope shone brightly as the Ukrainian Air Force, with laudable efficiency, neutralized the threat from the above, intercepting and destroying all 31 missiles aimed at their homeland. The remarkable feat underscored the unyielding spirit of Ukraine's defenders, standing vigilant against aggression. The timing of this ferocious attack, coinciding with the visit of U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, could hardly be considered coincidental. It serves as a grim reminder of the high stakes involved, not just for Ukraine, but for the international community at large. In response, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, undeterred by the shadows cast over his nation, renewed his plea for increased military support from Western allies. His call underscores the urgent need for solidarity in the face of aggression, a sentiment echoed across the globe as nations rally in support of Ukraine, at least some of them. As the dust settles and the immediate threat recedes, the focus shifts to the broader struggle for freedom and sovereignty. This backdrop sets a stage for the 16th annual Kyiv Security Forum, an event that has grown in significance against the current geopolitical turmoil. Themed Ukraine's call to the world, "Together we prevail," end quote, the forum aims to galvanize the global support for Ukraine, highlighting the critical importance of transatlantic alliances in preserving democratic values and sovereign integrity. The forum is not just a meeting of minds, it's a clarion call for unity in the face of adversity, commemorating a decade since the signing of the association agreement with the EU, a symbol of Ukraine's enduring quest for freedom. The discussions, slated to unfold over the 2 days, are poised to address the immediate needs of Ukraine, including military support and strategic alliances, while also casting an eye towards the future, encompassing Ukraine's aspirations for EU and NATO membership. With over 80 esteemed speakers from across the globe, including luminaries like Herman Van Rompuy, José Manuel Barroso, General David Petraeus, the forum stands as testament to the international community's unwavering support for Ukraine. These discussions, rich in diversity and depth, promise to forge a path forward, not just for Ukraine, but for the principles of sovereignty and democracy that unite us all, or at least should unite. One of the people who is present during this conference is a friend of our show. Before we talk to him, you can join us here on www.rackrakon.com, which is our website and our Substack, that you can leave us your email so that we can be in contact not only regarding this particular war, but all the front lines of the ongoing war against the West. because that's what we are going to talk about on my show. My name is Michał Rachon. This is Rack On. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
Stephen Moore, straight from this conference, straight from Kyiv. Great to see you again, Stephen.
Michael, always a pleasure. Great to be with you today.
So walk us through, because I assume that this is quite an interesting place and not just a regular conference that we would take part in if we, or you are actually, if you haven't been in a state and in a city that is under constant attack.
Yeah, so I'm talking to you right now from the stage of the Kyiv Security Forum. And you're asking yourself, well, the forum's going on right now. Why are there not people on the stage speaking? It's because I am in the backup stage for the Kyiv Security Forum. So we had about 31 missiles come into Kyiv last night. So they set up this backup area that is in the parking garage. So we had an air raid earlier today, and we had I don't think there was any missiles that were coming through, but we did have to come down here and use this for one of the panels. So this is just what happens.
Yeah, but actually it tells us a very interesting story that there is a war going on in Kyiv, as our viewers know. We reported more than 2 years. But despite the war and the missiles coming over Kyiv and on the heads of high figures and specialists on security issues, you still do it. You are in the middle of conference, and okay, guys, we just got to move to the parking lot, which is, I assume, just a shelter.
Yeah, there was an area siren that went off. Everyone's phone started blasting an alert, and at that point they said, "Okay, everyone, go down to the parking garage, go down to the shelter, and let's keep going." And this is just another example of the resilience and innovation of the people in Ukraine that just don't let things stop them. Vladimir Putin is not going to hold these people back. And, to your point, there's some big names here. The one that impressed me is the chief military commander of NATO was on the stage speaking, dodging Putin's missiles. And, and I think that's a real signal is what we're seeing, is we're seeing a signal that NATO is committed to Ukraine and that Vladimir Putin is not going to deter anyone in Ukraine or Europe.
Stephen, what is the atmosphere right now in Kyiv? You've seen all this. You've seen this war unfolding since day number one.
Day 5.
Yeah. So what is the feeling right now? Because on one hand, we know that there is a problem with the military support and financial support from United States. Looks like it is going to be solved pretty soon. On the other hand, we got the confusing communiques from the people and from the high political figures from Europe, discussion regarding the French troops should be present or should not be present on the territory of Ukraine. So what is the main reason? What are the topics that you are discussing on the panels and on the discussion like the Kyiv Security Forum right now?
Sure. Well, today everyone is tired because, those Russian alarm clocks go off at the most inconvenient times. Today it was about 5 a.m. But again, the people here are undeterred. And, some of the things we're hearing is just the commitment of NATO. And you mentioned France, and Macron is not here. I'm sure he would like to be given the tough talk that he's been giving for the last few weeks. And I got to tell you, France has underperformed for the history of this war. For the last 2 years, France has given all of $800 million, which ranks it behind Slovakia. And so France is really underperforming. But right now, Macron has picked the right time to start dispelling a 100-year myth that French are military cowards. Because, what he is saying right now is worth its weight in gold in persuading Republicans in the United States that Europe is going to step up and is stepping up to do its part. So, I hope to see shortly that we'll see a convoy of 100 French trucks rolling through Lviv. But But right now, I'll take the rhetoric because it's really helpful to those of us who are working with Congress and trying to get aid to Ukraine.
This is something very interesting from the perspective of the political divisions in the Western world. We don't get used to, we didn't have time to get used to the feeling that the states like France are hawkish in their rhetoric regarding the presence of troops in the distance, of course, from the perspective of Paris distance theaters of war. So what do people in Ukraine make right now of the possible perspectives of French presence of French troops in Ukraine? What those troops could be used to what kind of activities? You are mentioning the convoy of trucks. What can we expect if France is really committed to be present physically with boots on the ground in Ukraine?
Yeah, well, for me personally, I'm going to have to retire some of my favorite French jokes, like how many Frenchmen does it take to defend Paris? Nobody knows. It's never been tried.
The French tanks having 4 gears backwards, one forward.
Exactly. Yes, you know these jokes. They're popular in Poland too. So listen, if Macron wants to talk me out of telling those jokes again, I'm all for it. And here's the mood of the Ukrainian people right now, is that they are disappointed, a really mild word. They are really bummed about the dysfunction of the American Congress. It is, there's people dying friends of mine are, I fortunately have not lost anyone at the front, but, there's a lot of friends of mine who have. And I get calls from my friends at the front all the time saying things like, for every round we shoot, the Russians shoot 20 back, because that's all we've got. And so people are really dying right now in Ukraine because of U.S. congressional dysfunction. Now, if there is any sort of silver lining that comes out of this, is that, Michael, I think you and I agree that, we could be in World War III right now. And the only people taking action on that information is our adversaries, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, like Iran, Russia, North Korea, China. So those people are doing their best to do us in. And we're sort of talking about nonsense in the U.S. Congress and kind of debating stuff in Europe. And so what's happened because of the dysfunction of U.S. Congress is that Europe is stepping up. And if we are in the sort of war that I believe we're going to be in soon, where we've got fronts in Asia, in the Middle East, and in Europe, then we're going to need all the firepower that Europe can muster. So it's really good, I think, overall, that Europe is stepping up. And unfortunately, the Ukrainians, as they always do, are paying a very heavy cost to defend our freedoms.
What are your expectations? Because surely when you are over there, you are a man, as our viewers know, with more than 20 years of expertise on the Hill. You know Washington in and out. The political world of Congress is your political.
Some days I wish I didn't.
And Senate, this is basically your political world. So what are your expectations regarding the perspectives of unblocking the financial support that the United States keep on sending for those more than 2 years right now since the war broke out?
Here's what I see happening. There's a lot of conversation about something called the discharge petition, which is getting a majority of members of Congress to sign a petition to put a bill on the House floor for a vote, because the Speaker of the House decides what's going on the House floor, and Speaker Johnson is not currently putting anything on the House floor. But I will tell you this. So Speaker Johnson is, and those discharge petitions, by the way, are not going anywhere. So if you hear about those, it's just a sideshow. But Speaker Johnson is a man of faith. Speaker Johnson was a Baptist activist prior to going to Congress. And so we had the good fortune of one of our evangelical Christian allies from Ukraine going and meeting with Speaker Johnson the day after the State of the Union. And our ally, the evangelical Christian leader here in Ukraine, told him stories of Ukrainian Christian leaders being tortured and murdered for their faith. And that moved him to tears. And he said, I am with you. I am with Ukraine. Unfortunately, the majority of Republicans in Congress are not, and I'm working on that. And so what's happening is that, Russia is torturing and murdering Christians for their faith. And when you tell evangelical Christians that vote Republican they're more likely to vote for Ukraine, to support aid to Ukraine.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the things that you put the focus of your readers on your Substack account a couple of weeks ago. We discussed it on our program. That's very interesting. That shows how those issues of values and certain religions are important in unlocking the doors in Washington. I can share my part of the story, the knowledge that we got from Washington after the meetings of Polish president with Speaker Johnson and other political leaders in Washington. I've heard from the people who are close to this conversation that Polish president met politician, Speaker Johnson, who is fully informed about the real situation in Ukraine, and definitely he was not, and he is not a politician who's opposing the U.S. supporting Ukraine directly. It looks like it's a kind of political situation which tangles him somehow and makes it pretty tough politically to unlock those opportunities. What is the reason? Could you try to explain our viewers what is the reason for which Speaker Johnson is in a difficult position, knows the things that you and I are talking about, and cannot execute immediately actions accordingly?
Well, as you're kind enough to point out, I have been talking about the impact on Republicans of the Russians torturing and murdering evangelical Christians in Ukraine for their faith since like last summer. And I'm happy to see that we've gained traction. We're bearing fruit because on the face of it, it's a terrible things happening and needs to be brought to light. And it's also good politics because it helps Republicans in Congress get closer to supporting Ukraine. But here's what's going on is that the Speaker of the House is currently Speaker of the House because his predecessor, Kevin McCarthy, was voted out by his colleagues. And there was only 8 of his colleagues that joined with all the Democrats to vote him out. But this previous Speaker was voted out in part because he put a bill on the floor of aid to Ukraine for $300 million that passed with a majority of Republicans voting against it. And if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, and if you're in the House of Representatives, it doesn't matter who's in control. It is a big mistake to put something on the House floor that a majority of your party votes against. Now, this is the first time in history that anyone's lost their job over it. But Speaker Johnson, doesn't want to lose his job. And so he has to bring people together, bring people in. He has to make this inclusive. And we at the Ukraine Freedom Project have a website, RussiaTorturesChristians.org. And we're getting that information to members of Congress. We've met with about 100 members of Congress, and we've had that experience as well. You meet with people, you tell them the horrible stories, you show them the videos of the testimonies, and they're moved to tears. So that's kind of the situation.
Steve, my final question. We know that you are a technical guy. You are deep into the technical issues regarding the modern warfare, because we are talking about the modern warfare, and I'm not talking only about the title of the famous PlayStation games. What is there any context of this new technologies that are being used on the front lines against Russia while Ukraine is defending itself and presenting new types of weapons, new solutions? We talked about drones. We know that the naval drones are being used on the Black Sea. So any new technological hints, or that's not the subject of the conference?
Yeah, no, this is super cool. And I'm glad you brought this up, because you and I and only a few other people, folks that are talking about this, is that the best drone makers, the best military drone makers in the world right now are Ukrainians, because they don't have the money to buy anything else. So they're making very cheap drones. They're swarming targets, and they're destroying them. As you know, the Ukrainians have destroyed a third of the Russian Black Sea fleet, and many of those with marine drones. So they're taking a $250,000 marine drone, and they're sinking a $150 million Russian ship with it. They're so effective that the Russian ships are now hiding in Turkish territorial waters. And there's been how many? I think 11 refineries hit this year with Ukrainian drones. And so, they're taking out a lot of capacity for the refinery, which pays for Russia's war. And here's what I want to pass along to anyone in America that's listening to this, is that the American military, the American people are the beneficiaries of this, because this $250,000 drone is one of our allies. $250,000 Marine drone is put there by one of our allies against one of our adversaries. It could just be as easily one of our adversaries doing that to one of our $2.2 billion destroyers. So the people that are pioneering these new techniques of warfare that are going to be so important in the next conflicts we have are our allies, and we are paying them. The Department of Defense will spend $142 billion on R&D in 2024, and I bet none of it is going to be as game-changing as the information that we're getting from our Ukrainian allies on how to use drones in warfare.
Yeah, so basically, I promise you that this is the last question, but I got one more. We are, which is related to this one. We are weeks after, in my opinion, an absolutely breaking article of by New York Times. The article revealing long-standing, more than 10 years of cooperation between CIA and Ukrainian intelligence agencies is a big news. And yet, I do not see too many references in the world media to this article. The information about 12 CIA-funded bases, secret bases that are on the territory of Ukraine, the information that part of the attacks on the refineries and other targets were executed using the knowledge and the funds that have their roots in this 10 years long cooperation, and the information that we got, that actually the first phase of defense of Ukraine against Russia, with all those javelins, with all the techniques, with all the tactics that Ukraine used, was also in a way created in cooperation with the Central Intelligence Agency. I mean, this is a great news and big news, and it shows the effectiveness of this cooperation from the standpoint of USA. I wonder, what do you make of this article, of those news? Because they're really, really interesting and quite, and we do not see a big thing around this information in the world media.
Yeah, well, you know, the CIA does not invite me to their office parties. I wish they did. That'd be super interesting. But you know, and I'm kind of happy that our secret spy agency has only gotten one story in the New York Times about Ukraine. But you know, when you think about the degree to which the Ukrainians have been able to target something like 30 Russian generals and been able to target refineries and other military objectives deep inside Russia, you know, that information is coming from somewhere. You know, we're the guys with the satellites. The United States has got the satellites, they've got the intelligence, and you know, listen, I read that story. I love that story. It makes me feel good to know that someone is focused on this, because it ain't Congress. And so it's good to know that someone is thinking about how to keep World War III from happening sooner than it needs to. Yeah,
that's really interesting, and I think that the context of this, and my takeaway from this article, is that thanks to cooperation between this intelligence community of United States and Ukrainian intelligence, the information about the internal stuff and secrets of Russia could be brought to United States, and that's from the perspective of a guy like me, who is a big fan of transatlantic cooperation against Russian threat. It's a big news. Stephen, thank you very much for your time, your presence.
Always great to be with you, man.
Stay safe.
We'll
see you soon. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, you can join us on our Substack. You can, of course, find Stephen Moore on his Substack. We strongly recommend following and subscribing to his website. This is our website, rikeracom.com. You can leave us your email and stay in touch with us as we try to report daily from the front lines of the ongoing war against the West. We come back with this show on Monday. Till that day, stay safe. Ciao. Bye-bye.